Okay, so same day, I'm going to do a back-to-back video here, people, right? This is the follow-up video to the one that I'm converting over right now. Here we know, copyright, fair use, disclaimer under section 107. You can see it. Okay, here's my little video. Just let it play for a few minutes. All right, so that's done. Okay, and then we can exit out of that. You can see the video that I just did. It's converting right now. Okay, it's only 7:30, so I've got a little time to do this. I'm working downstairs now, so, you know, I'm upstairs, downstairs. It's not just up and down. It's, like, all over the place, right? So, you know, I only have so much energy, right? I'm trying to space myself, so. But this is important, people. Okay, this is what I was making reference to on my last video, so I will provide that video into this description, right, into this link. Like, I'll link in the video that I did for today, but not this, what I'm doing now. The other video was talking about masks, variants, and don't breathe and all that other stuff. Okay, I was reading something from other people that wrote other things. In this case, we're going to listen to what this individual has to say. Okay, right now we're at, and because I want people, I don't get enough views. Obviously, I'm being shadow banned, people, like, seriously. But, and I know, like, for the ones who regularly watch my channel and regularly listening to what I have to say, they're par and par with pretty much everything that I'm saying in terms of they understand. Like, it's almost like they don't have to be informed about it. They don't have to be told about it. They don't have to be reminded about it. It's probably reassuring that they hear it from somebody else, but it's not anything that they don't already know. So with that said, I'm still doing this for those one or two that might trickle in that aren't necessarily having their thinking caps on for whatever reason. Okay? I'm just trying to bring that thinking cap on and providing a way for people to begin to hear exactly what this individual is saying in a roundabout way without really saying anything much of substance when it comes to commitment and being transparent and being accountable for the things that she expects 5.1 million people to do based on suppositions, you know, a gamble in terms of predictions that haven't come true yet. And a lot of this is based on misinformation or information that's being hidden from the general public because there's a political agenda behind what we're going through right now. Okay, so don't need to get into that. Right now we're at 13:42 into the video, and we're just going to listen for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to point something out, okay? I like to bring this up, take a good look at who we're looking at.
Oops. I'm missing one of my notes around, there we go. As you know, we are following quite closely the variants of concern that are rising in the province and across Canada. And we've had an increase today of 46 new confirmed COVID-19 cases that are variants of concern. So that brings the total.
Keep in mind, she doesn't really tell us where it comes from, outside of maybe the district, but not the demographics around it, okay? As into who, what age, where they're located, and what ethnic heritage.
To 246 that we know about in the province. Of these, 16 cases are still active, and the remaining are people who have had past cases. 218 are the B117, which is associated initially with the UK, and 28 are the B1351, which is initially associated with South Africa. The majority of these variants of concern continue to be in the Fraser, Health, and Vancouver coastal regions. 178 people in the Fraser Health region.
Which is my region, which has, I don't know, 350,000 plus strong Punjabis. Okay, they're at probably 60% of the total population of Fraser Health across the Fraser River, where I live.
And 60 in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region. There continue to be just the same small numbers, 6 on Island Health and 2 people in Interior Health, and no confirmed variant cases yet in Northern Health. As you know, we are most concerned as well.
There's actually 6 health authorities. If I just heard correctly, she only mentioned 5. But there are 6. Because when I printed out that MAID information in regards to assisted medical dying, there are six independent health authorities across BC.
About transmissibility and where people are becoming infected with variants of concern. And right now we continue to have challenges in identifying the transmission chains for about 25% of our cases. There are currently 4 people in hospital, and 2 of the deaths that we've had in recent days have been people who had been infected with a variant of concern.
Remember I said she's coming in with a second pillar, so she can compare the 2 numbers against each other in terms of your standard virus versus your variant virus now. Variant virus 1, right? Well, 2. The UK and the South African one, I mean, you could go into 3 different grids by this time, 3 different pillars, right? Right now, she's just starting off with pillar 1. Well, pillar 2. We've already got pillar 1 established with over 1,300 people, supposedly, with no fact checks, dying from a virus that is still up for debate, while we've got a new pillar coming in, a new tracking with a new variant. Well, 2 separate variants, all piled into 1 pillar at this point, coming up fast in the ranks.
As you know as well, since the start of our immunization program, we've had, we're almost at 300,000. We're 298,851 doses of vaccine have been administered across BC, and the number of second doses is about 86,746. And as you know, we made the very important decision as more data was becoming available earlier this week to increase the interval between the first and second dose so that we can maximize that really good protection that we're coming to understand.
That we're coming to understand, okay? She didn't say that we have. She said that we're coming to understand. She's being elusive, non-committing. She's not committing to anything. She's keeping it open, okay? Just, right? They're coming to understand it. It hasn't been documented, okay? Right? Remember, she keeps saying that these things are safe. They've been proven to be effective, right? You know, if they wouldn't have been, Canada Health, whatever board wouldn't have approved it, and blah, 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 blah. But yet, on the other breath, like is now, they're just understanding, just coming into understanding that it's safe. They're just coming into understanding that it might work for at least some time.
That we would get from the initial dose of vaccines in BC. And I do want to acknowledge that this decision-making that we made, particularly around the extending of this interval, as we've had in a number of cases, reflects us learning as we go.
Reflects at learning as we go. What do you do when you have a science experiment? You collect data, you try different methods to do something to get different samples of data so that you can compare the data to see what the results are of the various experiments that you do under the one umbrella experiment, right? That's what experiments are.
Go through this pandemic. We've learned about how the virus transmits.
We've learned. Well, no, we were supposed to know before you gave it to us. That's the point of it going through clinical trials. But you see, the numbers were fudged, people. The clinical trials aren't even legitimate in the true sense of developing an effective, safe, reliable vaccine that would still have adverse effects attached to it, okay, under a traditional sense.
It's we learned about how are the measures that where it's most likely to transmit, the measures that we need to take.
Now she took from talking about a so-called vaccine and just jumped into the actual virus itself, and we're learning how it transmits as if people
take to protect each other from transmission.
Their solution to protecting each other from infecting each other is what my last video represents. Masks, social distancing, closing businesses, breaking up families, isolating people, punishing people, targeting people, gang stalking people, abusing people emotionally, physiologically. Do you know that go into my videos, people, when you bring trauma to the brain under a psychological through a psychological aspect, you traumatize the brain. The brain automatically goes into the fight or flight mode and creates a whole lot of cortisol, one of those. It's cortisol or cortisone. It's been a while since I've had to talk about this, okay? And through that process, if it doesn't calm down and relax so that the brain can repair itself after it went into that heightened state, after a while, that cortisol, I think it's called cortisol, right? It creates permanent brain damage. It's already been documented through children and their brain development that when children suffer a lot of trauma at an early age, it can actually create multiple personalities. You know, they bring in learning disabilities. You know, they develop bipolar and all kinds of crazy crap that can come from the brain being traumatized through psychological warfare. Okay?
And as these vaccines have become available, almost day by day, but definitely by week, we are learning more about how they work, about their effectiveness.
Right? By week, by day, we're learning more. We're learning more by how effective they are, how safe they are. No. You already told us they were safe. You already told us they were effective. You already told us that Health Canada approved it because the proper studies were done, right? You already told us that we have nothing to worry about if we take it because it's been approved by the federal government and they say it's safe and it's effective. So if that is the case, why are you still fucking learning things? Seriously. Because it's not safe, people. It's experimental analog that they're just putting out into the public through different analogs. You got your one analog, and then you've got the sister analogs. You've got the fentanyl, then you've got the carfenol, and you've got this other offshoot of a fentanyl that's named something else. There's different grades of fentanyl. There's different dosage of fentanyl. There's different ways to introduce fentanyl into the system. Well, this is the same crap. It's just a different pile that they're learning from, that they're monitoring. As out of one side of the tongue, they're talking about, oh, it's safe, it's effective, it's been approved. Yeah, they've done all the studies, blah, blah, blah. Even though we won't get into the nitty-gritty, into the devil of the details when it comes to the animal studies that were done 20 years ago based on this technology, where none of those animals survived, and that we've been struggling for 20 years to try and figure out how to make this technology fucking work, but we weren't successful to do that until CRISPR came along, and now we can sneak it in under the guise of CRISPR as they're building cancer clinics, people, predicting that 50% of the population, 2.6 million people, are going to come down with cancer in their lifetime. Why are they coming down with cancer? cancer in their lifetime, as they are now being redirected into these cancer clinics that are going to be strictly creating more analogs to correct the problems that the first analog created. But they're still learning, right? They're still learning.
About their safety, which is also critically important.
They're learning about their safety, which is also critically... Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm not going to interrupt it and I'm going to let you hear it and then probably just end the fucking video there because it's going to get too long. Because once I'm over here, I'm sure I'll find a whole bunch of more rhetoric. I want you to listen to it for yourself and hear it for yourself and use your critical thinking skills and put on your fucking thinking cap and really catch what this individual is saying, which isn't very much outside of she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. It's either safe or it's not. It was either approved because it was tested properly or it's not. You can't have both. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't expect people to give up their life so that you can sit up there and look like you're fucking God of 5.2 million people and not be held to account.
Important. And the decision making that we don't take lightly. We spent quite a lot of time looking at it, but we did need to take this decision rather rapidly over this weekend.
Over this weekend. We took a lot of fucking time and it really had to fucking really think about it, but we had to do it rapidly over the weekend. Like, do you see how she talks in circles? It took a lot of time. It was really hard to make that decision, even though it was just a weekend fucking romp. You know, it's like a quickie, you know? Let's get together for the weekend and have a fucking quickie. Use our brain cells and then say, oh, that was so hard to do because it took a lot of time to fucking make that decision, even though it was done over a 2-day period. Yeah, okay. Hold on a minute. Okay, I just made my coffee, so we're going to come back and we're going to listen to this one more time after the fact, right? But right now I'm just kind of interrupting the flow here just to, you know, open up your brain a little bit if you're not catching these things, because it's important that you really catch these things, people, in terms of what this individual is not saying compared to what you think she's saying, okay?
After extensive consultation, because we were coming up to a time this week where there was tens of thousands of doses of vaccine being scheduled for people to receive their second dose, and that would have left us with very little vaccine to be able to continue our need to protect more people in more communities around the province.
Have we ever stopped to think that maybe they don't want to give the second booster anytime soon because they don't want the numbers of deaths suddenly skyrocketing? Because when I looked at that CD website with the adverse effects, some of those deaths came in after the second dose, people. Okay? Because what it does is it creates heightened immune system response. Right? There's a name for it. But the immune system goes into overdrive and begins to attack itself.
So while I will regret and apologize to those communities, to the long-term care homes, and to individuals who had...
So I guess that's why old people continue to die in these old folks' homes, because they didn't get their second dose, or why we're having these outbreaks, even though if one person comes in with the virus, it suddenly becomes an outbreak, from what I understand in terms of through the grapevine. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I don't know how many people have to have this so-called virus before it becomes an outbreak, but she's already said in this video that they're having more outbreaks. People continue to die, including now with the new variant, okay? So if that's the case, for the ones that have been inoculated, why not just continue on with the program based on what the company said, being that the company did such a good job at their research, right? They didn't do a good job on their research. No, they're pumping out old technology that's failed in the past, and they're tired of sitting on a fucking gold mine, and they want to capitalize off a bunch of dirty chemicals that are going to be mixed, matched, put together, and then filtered out here, like spread out across the freaking continent, right, for their fucking data mining. With their spin doctors, Dr. Gods, spinning the narrative to keep you kind of on track.
A second dose schedule.
But you see, that's the thing, though. They're going to give you what they want to give you, whether you like it or not. You don't get to choose. This individual already said this on their last speech.
That had been postponed or for several months now. And I know that came as a shock for many people. And I regret that our communications weren't able to keep up as fast as the decision making. But please know.
But they took a long, long time to make that decision, even though it was over the weekend. And now she just suddenly admits that it was a fast decision. How can you go from something that took a long time to decide, that really happened only over the weekend, to which now suddenly happened? Like, it's nonstop with this play on words.
Know that this was made in the spirit of understanding data.
Oh, in the spirit of what? We want to help you?
And maximizing the benefit to all of us. And that
by denying the ones that already got the dose their second dose based on a decision that took a long time, even though in reality it was a weekend slam dunk deal, right? That pushed everybody that's in line for their second dose off to the side because they're collecting data, and as far as they know, it should be safe and it should be effective, and it could be, but they're not really too sure yet because, we're not that deep into the game. And in order to make everybody else safe in the province, even though the only paranoid individuals are the ones that seem to be roaming the halls of the Parliament building. Outside of that, everybody else is just a victim to these individuals' paranoia, okay? It's going to make the rest of the province safe because they're going to be able to give 86,000 more doses to unsuspecting victims that want it because they don't take the time to discern, to decipher, to analyze, to really think about what this individual, this binary individual is saying.
Dose you didn't receive on Tuesday or Wednesday or today is now being administered to a community member, to another member of our...
So you forfeited your second dose because we don't want people to know that if we give it to you, you might suddenly die. And that would expose us much, much too quickly because we're not ready yet to really sink our teeth in to what we're doing because we're still using taxpayers' dollars to set the stage to make it so that nobody can escape. Okay? So those individuals now have put their lives at risk to save other people. That's basically what she's saying. Okay? You've done your duty to Canada by letting somebody else have a turn. Even though nobody's getting the correct and concise information.
Our family, our community here in BC, to protect them, and ultimately it will bring us all closer to getting to our post-pandemic world. Also want to address the fact
post-pandemic prison world
that the National Advisory Committee on Immunization has also endorsed that this is the right thing for us to do.
You notice how she always calls in the big guns, right? As if it makes everything okay. But it always goes back to that common denominator. Birds of a feather flock together. If you're of criminal mind, you will attract criminal minds to facilitate whatever it is those criminal minds conspire to do under a criminal organization that technically only requires 3 individuals under the Criminal Code of Canada.
Canada right now. And I want to express my gratitude to NACI. NACI is an amazing group of experts. I've had the privilege of sitting on the National Advisory.
They all sit on a toilet and shit out crap. So much for being an expert.
Committee for 8 years. Some of our colleagues here in BC, our best brains around immunization, have also been.
Yes, and Eleanor, who likes to medically kidnap people so that she can steal their money and lock them up like a dirty secret after she's basically wiped out their brain with her fucking abuse, okay? Just think of Uncle John, all right? Eleanor is a program manager to the provincial immunization program. Now, whether she stepped down or not, or maybe she got a fucking bonus and she got promoted, I don't know. I just know that Eleanor is crooked to the bone. Uncle John was just the bone for Eleanor to be even more crooked, to go get more bones. You hear it rattling? Do you hear the bones rattling? Skeletons in the closet, man.
Both members and chairs of NACI, and we tremendously respect the work that they do, and we're just very grateful that we have all.
So that little group of people becomes the lording lords, the what are those things called? So you've got the god, right? You've got the queen, and then you've got, what are those things called? Lords, right? Where the queen appoints somebody with a sword and say, now you're like a duke, or right? The hierarchy, right?
Come up with the same important decisions around these critical issues for us in BC and in Canada. As you will also know, the first deliveries of the AstraZeneca Serum Institute of India COVID-19 vaccines will be arriving in our province. We expect sometime next week. This vaccine will be made available to first responders and
coming in from India.
Other essential workers in the delivery.
I wonder what part of India. India is a big continent, okay?
Delivery of these vaccines will run in parallel.
India has a lot of corruption. India, in some parts of the country, which is a whole continent, they have 70% of the youth population addicted to heroin. Okay, it's a national problem to the where the Indian people, regardless of their religious backgrounds, wanted their leaders to deal with that issue when it became election time before anything else on the roster, because of the numbers of addicted to heroin in that fucking country. Okay, so to have heroin in freaking British Columbia, Canada, with all these Indian people and Chinese people and other people from God knows where they come from, right? It's not unusual because that stuff comes across the water, right? Not to mention, you've got the freaking United States Army protecting the poppy fields in Afghanistan. Okay? They're literally protecting the poppy fields. Now, Afghanistan is not India, but India has a huge problem with heroin. And now so does British Columbia, Canada. But they kind of took care of that problem because they brought in fucking fentanyl, which is manufactured on the freaking cheap, because it's nothing but a bunch of fucking chemicals mixed up by a freaking crazy chemist.
Parallel, but separately from our age-based community-wide immunization program. And when I say that, we had in our initial plans, it was looking at phase 3 and 4 because that's what we understood these vaccines would be available. So it is an added bonus to us that we now have these vaccines earlier in this program. But I also recognize that the category we're talking about, first responders, essential workers, is a very broad group of people. And we have come to recognize through this pandemic.
I don't know what the difference is with this vaccine in terms of, I don't know if it's an mRNA. I don't know if it's based on a traditional vaccine, which I highly doubt, because creating a traditional vaccine can take years and years and years and years and years to do, right? However, doing a flu once a year, you know, that's usually about a 12-month process. So maybe that's why we're getting this now, because they came in at the beginning of last year starting a traditional vaccine, and now it's coming to fruitation, which is a lot more expensive than a freaking analog, people.
How many people absolutely are essential workers or people who cannot work from home? And we know that that covers a broad swath of people. So as we have done with our immunization so far, we will prioritize our delivery of these vaccines accordingly. And I want to be clear, this is not a random process. This is not me making a decision out of the blue. We follow a very defined process. And I referred initially to...
Right, we just meet over the weekend and make a decision and then say it was a long fucking complicated decision, even though it only was like a Zoom call over the weekend. Okay? And it's probably being done to cover up the fact that people are having adverse reactions after the second dose. And before that freaking fucking can of worms explodes and the general population catch winds of it, right? They're going to try and prolong it a little more and find a way to bury that fact, because when the time comes for the second dose and the person dies, they'll just say it was the variant that killed them. Do you understand? That's what they'll say. It was the variant. It wasn't the first virus, because we cured that one. It was the second one that creeped in off a fucking doorknob. The nurse didn't change her gloves.
To NACI, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, earlier on when this pandemic started.
Like, seriously, when are they just going to start putting human beings in fucking monkey tubes? Lining us all up, one tube after another tube after another tube, like a bunch of fucking monkeys here. Okay? And then, you know, keep us safe that way, in plexiglass tubes, right? Side by side, with our faces up, where we can't fucking even turn them from side to side to say hello to our neighbor. Okay?
We all went through a process of determining who vaccines could be available to, who would be the priority populations if and when vaccine became available. And those lists, those categories have been refined and revised over the period of the last 10 months. And since we've had vaccines available, they've been revised again. Early on, we didn't know if vaccines would be effective in older people, as many other...
Early on, we didn't know if vaccines would be effective on elderly people. Okay, we only have over 1,300 people dying, with that number still adding on to it in terms of, we just had 4 more die, right? Last week or 2 days ago, it was 2. 4 days before that, it was 3. They're just trickling in right now, okay? Because they don't want to ruffle any feathers, okay? Because people are getting tired of the bullshit, right? So they got to be real cocky and coy about what they're doing here, okay? But you heard her. What did she say? We're going to go back, right? Early on, when we were giving it to the elderly people, we weren't too sure if it was going to work. Well, if you didn't know if it was going to work, why the fuck did you even give it to them in the first place? Because you knew it was an experiment. You knew it was brought in through the back door with big money, laundering taxpayers' dollars to make big money, right? Through
vaccines are less effective, but we now know that they do work, and
we now know that we do work. Again, there's nothing there to fact check that, people, considering that they're still having outbreaks, right? They're still having freaking deaths. Now they've got their little variants to keep everybody fucking afraid of a common cold, right?
They work very well in older people. They work well in people with chronic illnesses.
If they work so freaking well for all these old people, why can't people go see their loved ones? Because it's hogwash, right?
They work well in many populations.
How do we know that? Just because you said that, Dr. God? Right? What, as if you can keep a fucking sentence without it twisting it around? Like, keep a sentence straight, to the point, without twisting it around?
So that's allowed us to monitor and change things a little bit in terms of that.
So we're still monitoring, and we're going to change things a little bit because we're still collecting that data because we're data mining, right? We're experimenting.
We have a long-standing BC immunization committee that is also made.
Again, where's Eleanor? Where's Eleanor in all this shit? Because you know she's not my friend. Right? You know she has absolutely zero compassion for my remaining family members who are still alive, right? If they wouldn't have done what they did to Uncle John, Shimei would be alive today and would be working with Eleanor as a registered nurse. But you see, Eleanor is that spiteful kind of jealous bitch that didn't want competition coming up in the fucking ranks. Somebody that was smarter, younger, prettier, had more energy, and obviously more ethics than her. So Eleanor made sure Shimei got depressed, right? And put into precarious positions where ultimately Shimei died. And then what happened to Shimei? 9 days later, $500,000 to $1 million later of taxpayers' money to rob her body of organs and teeth. Where's Eleanor? I'd like to know.
Made up of experts from public health, from vaccinology, the Vaccine Evaluation Center. We have.
This is not a vaccine, people, because if it was a vaccine, she wouldn't be saying any of this shit. Oh, well, we're monitoring, we're learning, we're finding out, we hope. Yeah,
Pharmacists and family doctors and infectious
we already know about doctors, okay? Doctors get rid of their patients, right, by telling them to go take them to court for a simple freaking just wanting to get their dead daughter's medical files simply because the doctor is greedy and obviously wants to get new family patients so that he can write out fucking OxyContin and those kind of prescriptions and make money on top of cover his own tracks in terms of what he knows as to be truth. And he's silent on it.
And others who have sat on this committee for many years.
Yeah. Eleanor sat on that committee for many years.
Rotates periodically, and it's supported by the BC Centre for Disease Control. And so our
That's what you call the rich getting richer and the poor getting poor. Okay? That's what you call it.
Recommendations around who gets vaccine when are based on using the NACI guidance, looking at the data in the real world, and the analysis that's done by our standing committee, the BC Immunization Committee, which is our provincial level equivalent. And this committee uses public health, both the immunology, vaccinology, vaccine science, and public health principles, as well as an ethical framework. And I would refer people to the BC CDC website, where we have our ethical framework for.
If they had an ethical framework, people, we wouldn't be getting all this double talk time after time after time. With ultimatums, threat, intimidations, coercion, fear tactics, fear porn, right? If it was so ethical, we wouldn't be getting any of that.
Decision making around vaccines as well posted. So based on this information, we will the BC Immunization Committee is right now going through a process of defining who should receive vaccine when, as it becomes available, and that we will ensure that those groups are then sequenced and we put the operational pieces into place. So those recommendations I expect are coming to me in the coming days, and based on this information, a detailed plan will be developed over the next week to 2 weeks, which we will share publicly as soon as we have those details ready.
It's already been written by a ghostwriter because everything that we've been going through has been written by a ghostwriter, okay? Probably a mainframe fucking AI computer that's sending out its drones to do its dirty work.
And I'm hoping and expecting that will be around the 18th of March. In the meantime, we are planning to use the initial shipment of the AstraZeneca vaccines, the Serum Institute of India vaccines that are coming available.
I guess she keeps mentioning that it comes from India. She doesn't mention where Pfizer comes from. She doesn't mention where Moderna comes from. But if you notice, she keeps saying that this AstraZeneca comes from India, because what she's doing is she's it's like gaslighting with the Punjabis and the Hindus, and we have a lot of people out here from India, right? So I guess if it comes from India, therefore the Indian people, regardless of their religious backgrounds, they should find comfort in that because it's coming from their own country. Because that's the only thing that I can think of, right? She's pulling on the Indian heartstrings, right? So that they'll be more readily acceptable of what's being fed to them in terms of take your shot and come back and take it again. And then when the variant gets out of control because of basically you who live in the Fraser Health Authority, right, region, we're going to come back and we're going to get you to do it all over again.
As soon as we can.
And all they have to do is throw in the word India for the next freaking batch of analogs that they're going to create. And those people, many of them, once they listen to their pastors and their guru pastors or wherever they come from, many of them are just going to follow. They're just flocking because the boss said so.
And to address our ongoing clusters in outbreaks that are leading to some of these rapidly increasing.
Right? For all this, whatever we've got going on good, everything's getting out of control real fast. You notice that?
Increasing numbers in some places, some communities, to best protect our communities. So we know that there are some outbreaks right now that have been going on, that have been challenging to manage, where immunization is going to be that extra tool to help us manage those so that we can stop that cycle of workplace to community transmission. And that will be our focus initially. So also today, I wanted to bring us up to date on something that we've also talked about quite a few times over the last number of months.
I haven't listened
and
to
that's
this.
Our strategy and our plan for use of point-of-care testing.
Okay. I could just go on and on and on and on and on. I'm not even into 23 minutes of this video. And this video is 1 hour and 20 minutes. And I know when they get into the questions, okay? This part, I don't know what she's talking about. Because I ended up doing my own video reading that stuff, okay? Which, actually, the video should be done converting now. So I can probably upload that video. And then after I upload that video, I am going to upload this video. And I'm going to ask whoever is watching this video and the last video, they need to go into this video that I'm just showing you here and really just stop and listen. If you have to, like, stop. If you have to in order to catch it, just stop the video itself, so that your brain can catch up to what this individual actually said. So that you can begin to discern the discrepancies between the forked tongue, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Isn't that how they say it? All right? Something like that. Right? I don't know, people, we're in so much trouble. We're so much in trouble. I shouldn't have to worry about being murdered under any circumstances. I'm supposed to be living in Canada. I mean, it's enough, like I said, for what my family has already gone through. Murder is real. Cops don't do much about murder out here. They really don't. Not unless it's by gun, because then they are forced to do it. And then they can bring in their eye hit and go around acting like they do such a great job in society. But anything else outside of an actual, gun or stabbing where there's blood all over the place, you're not going to get no justice. Nope, they cover that shit up. They really do. Yeah, they cover up medical kidnappings. They cover up wrongful apprehensions. they cover up prostitution and the exploitation of vulnerable young people. I'm not going to just say women, young men as well, right? They cover up so much, people. And now they're covering up this crap. So I've got this one uploading now. And then I'm going to upload this one. Oh, I did say that we were going to go back a little bit, right? I don't even know where I was. And just hear it without me interrupting it, so that hopefully you'll catch it. And then you can listen to the rest of the video. And like I said, if you have to, stop the video to let the brain catch up to what she's really saying and start hearing it for what she's really saying.
About their safety, which
is a lot of this. Okay? Let's see if we can do this. We're at 1600. Well, 16 minutes.
First and second dose, so that we can maximize that really good protection that we're coming to understand that we would get from the initial dose of vaccines in BC. And I do want to acknowledge that this decision-making that we made, particularly around the extending of this interval, as we've had in a number of cases, reflects us learning as we go through this pandemic. We've learned about how the virus transmits. We learned about how are the measures that, where it's most likely to transmit, the measures that we need to take to protect each other from transmission. And as these vaccines have become available, almost day by day, but definitely by week, we are learning more about how they work, about their effectiveness, about their safety, which is also critically important. And the decision-making that we don't take lightly. We spent quite a lot of time looking at it, but we did need to take this decision rather rapidly over this weekend after extensive consultation, because we were coming up to a time this week where there was tens of thousands of doses of vaccine being scheduled for people to receive their second dose, and that would have left us with very little vaccine to be able to continue our need to protect more people in more communities around the province. So while I will regret and apologize to those communities, to the long-term care homes, and to individuals who had a second dose scheduled that had been postponed or for several months now. And I know that came as a shock for many people. And I regret that our communications weren't able to keep up as fast as the decision-making. But please know that this was made in the spirit of understanding data and maximizing the benefit to all of us. And that dose you didn't receive on Tuesday or Wednesday or today is now being administered to a community member, to another member of our family, our community here in BC, to protect them. And ultimately, it will bring us all closer to getting to our post-pandemic world. Also want to address the fact that the National Advisory Committee on Immunization has also endorsed that this is the right thing for us to do in Canada right now.
Hold on a minute. Be quiet. We're just going to come in off the block here, okay? There's something in here I want you to hear, but we're just going to start there. I don't know how long it's going to take to what I want you to hear, but let's just listen.
Canada has approved it for use in all adults based on real-world experience as well as the clinical trials. But the clinical trials data was limited in older people, and NACI recognized that. And so they said, we know it works really well in this younger adult age group, so focus on that. What we have been learning, and I mentioned that in my opening diatribe today, but, we're learning as we go with this.
We're learning as we go.
Rapid response research.
It's rapid response research. She says it right there. It's rapid response research.
It means that we take what we know today from the UK, and tomorrow we'll know more, and next week we'll know more, and we're going to know a whole lot more about how the vaccine works in the AstraZeneca vaccine works in older people from the UK within the next few weeks, because they have been using both vaccines, Pfizer and AstraZeneca, in all age groups, but starting with older people in the UK interchangeably. And we are seeing good response from both vaccines in the real world. But that data is still being compiled. It takes time for all of that to come together. And we will, absolutely expect we're going to see more information about how well it works in older people. And NACI will be revising the recommendations as appropriate when that information becomes available. I will also say that these vaccines are used interchangeably in the UK, and they work as effectively, both of them, with some of the...
How does she know that, people? She can't guarantee shit. She already said it's a rapid response research.
Trial data from AstraZeneca, the trials themselves were challenging, and the two-dose efficacy that is being used, that Health Canada based the approval on, was about 60-some%. But if we look at the data and the different arms of the trial, they did a single-dose arm, and the prevention, the effectiveness, the efficacy, so that's in the trials, we call it efficacy. In real life, we call it effectiveness. But in the...
Ooh, I'm so cute. I'm just a cute little old lady, but I'm not really that old because I'm binary and I just get plugged in every now and then and get my battery charged up and I'm good to go like an ever-ready battery.
In the clinical trial of the single dose, it was 87%, I believe it was, 85 or 87% effective after 12 weeks. And when they did the two-dose one, the people who got their second dose 12 weeks or later also had much higher protection from that vaccine. So the bottom line, which the WHO, with vaccine experts are saying, is around the world, these vaccines work. They all work.
Only you're not too sure yet. That's why you're monitoring everything, right? Experimenting as you go along, assuming things are working, but keeping everybody to a position where they can't breathe and their little gland in their head is slowly but surely shriveling up like a dry peanut.
They're effective, they're safe, so take the vaccine that you're offered. And I would say...
So take it! Take the vaccine that you're offered! Rawr!
That to everybody out there. The AstraZeneca vaccine works well. It has high levels of protection after 3 weeks, and we know that we may even find that it is effective for a longer period of time with a single dose.
We may even find, but I thought you said you knew what's going on. I thought you said it's safe. It's been proven safe, right? It was approved by the World Health Organization. It was approved by the Trudeau government. It was approved by all your fucking friends that like to flock together. It's supposed to be safe. So why are you saying that it might be safe now? Or it might be effective? Or it might work?
Like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca are both viral vector vaccines. So again, they're another new platform, similar to the messenger RNA vaccines are different, but they're the same type of platform. So we're learning more as we go. And
how can you have... They're the same platform, but they're different. But they're still the same platform. Are they not telling us maybe something about this Johnson & Johnson and this right? They're saying it's a viral vector. In other words, it would have been made in a traditional sense, but yet they're comparable to each other. So that makes me suspicious.
yes, we will be coming out with a prioritization for people who are in our essential workers, people who can't work from home, first responders in the coming days, and the AstraZeneca will be the one that we'll focus on because.
Honestly, people, I already think some of those individuals, maybe not all, but there's a large portion of them, especially in Surrey, they've been infected with something already, okay? For them to do the things that they do out here with people like Shemaine, Uncle John, and Sierra, and like, seriously, there's something wrong with them. And, you know, even they've been altered somehow, some way. Something has affected them. And now they want to infect everybody.
It's fridge stable, which means we can be much more agile in how we're able to get it to people's workplaces and things like that. All of these vaccines are amazing, great vaccines. They're safe. And
how does she know that? She just said a little while ago they're monitoring it. They're waiting to see what the results are. They're assuming that it's safe, right? They don't really know.
They're effective.
Shannon, do you have a follow-up?
Okay, this is what I wanted you to hear.
A question for a colleague. Many families have been fighting to get essential visitor status. At one facility, families say there appeared to be a blanket policy of denying the designation to everyone. The ombudsperson's office reviewed a complaint and found 25 out of the 100 residents there would have benefited from having an essential visitor. So does it concern you that some families were treated unfairly and denied essential visitors?
So what happened to the other 75%? They don't benefit from having a loved one come in and see them? Only 25%? How does that work, people? 75% of old people just like being by themselves in a care facility? Or maybe they're just kind of like bedridden and are completely oblivious to their surroundings that it wouldn't matter.
Visitor designation.
Yeah, it does absolutely concern me, and that is one of the reasons, working with the advice of the Ombudsperson's office, Mr. Chalk, we put in place a single provincial order and a single provincial guideline. And it is troubling to me when I hear those stories. There is a process that is outlined in those guidelines of where to go if you feel you've been inappropriately denied that essential visitor status. So that is important for people to know. It's on the website. It's linked to it on my website, the PHO website, with the order. And there is an appeals process. You can as well, if you feel there's an issue like this, go to the Ombudsperson. His office has a role to play as well, as does my office. But your first step is to go directly to the administrator of the facility that you're working in, and there is a time-sensitive process that they must follow. I will say we have over 500 long-term care homes and additional assisted living facilities in this province, and so I cannot know what's happening in every single one of them, but our guidance is designed to be consistent and to err on the side of providing an essential visitor for everyone who asks for it.
Next question is from Richard Zisman, Global News.
Dr. Henry, can you give us some details on what clusters will be targeted with AstraZeneca? Are we talking regional or types of clusters, and how many AstraZeneca vaccines?
Okay, so I'm going to finish this video with this. This is John's sister, right? She's a C. This is what she's got in credentials. I told you she's been a nurse for a long time. She's a senior nurse within the provincial government for over 40 years. Occupational health, nurse, immunization program manager. Eleanor has over 12 years of experience as a manager. This is John's mother. Okay, she died, which means they got richer. They took over her superannuation life insurance policy, I'm sure too, because that family is inundated with government union workers, right? That's why John did what John did, because he knew what they were like. Okay, she died on August 2nd of 2015. Okay? She was born in 1915 and she died in 2015. Okay? Uncle John wanted to go see her, right, for her 100th birthday. Okay? So, when they say John wasn't seeing his mother, blah, 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 no, the kids took him to go see his mother. And they were getting ready to take him to go see his mother for her birthday in July, to which she had, and then she died. Evelyn died peacefully at her home with her family by her side. Okay? But that right there is John's sister. She's part of the team. They still have her listed, people. Right here. And she sits on other boards that relate to this stuff. Right? Execution of Health Serve Workplace Wellness Clinics. Health Serve immunization programs. She also manages and coordinates the execution of. She's the one who told Uncle John that he couldn't see the kids because he wasn't well enough yet, and he knew that. Anyway. Now, we've got Dr. God coming in, and they're going to talk about the Punjabi community, okay? And you're going to hear, because this is why I'm doing the second video. I've been wanting to point this out to you. I mean, everything that this guy had to say, I wouldn't mind going back and doing some commentary on that, but it just gets to be too much after a while, right? He was talking on about ambulances and how they're burning out, and there's 30 of them less now, even though they've added more ambulance services to the system over the last 2 years because of them overworking themselves to death, right? With all this fentanyl, freaking over 1,700 people have died with fentanyl in the year of 2020, right? We've got 4.5 people dying every day right now as it is with fentanyl-related deaths every day as it is, as 30% less, well, 30 ambulances have been taken offline because all the workers are burnt out from running around town blasting their sirens as they're going around scooping up on dead bodies, basically.
Prabjot Kalon Omni.
Okay? Going around scooping up on dead bodies.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. So the one local Sikh temple actually raised a concern on behalf of the
Sikh temple on behalf of
community regarding the limit and how it's affecting the mental health of those who are unable to grieve the passing of the loved ones due to COVID restrictions. They can't visit to the hospitals. They can't
visit to the hospitals. They can't even attend whole family
as a funeral.
At
even
funerals.
not able to attend as a family the last prayers of the loved ones.
They're not allowed to gather as a family for the last prayers of their loved one. They can't go into the hospitals. They can't go into the care homes. They can't breathe. They have to wear masks.
Which is very important for the Sikh culture.
Which is very important for the Sikh culture to socialize and congregate and build and mourn and, share food and just the whole 9 yards, people.
And they are asking for the increase the number of people to attend these funerals, especially the temple prayers, because the temples has a huge space. They can maintain.
The temples have a huge the temple, and trust me, I've been in their temples. Wally, my old landlord, took me into the temples with my nonprofit back in, oh God, I don't remember when it was, but it was long time ago. And they're huge. And, they want to have their prayer sessions with their dead loved ones that they weren't allowed to see as they were suffering in isolation all by themselves, like a dirty secret, like Uncle John. It's not their dirty, it's not the Punjabi's dirty secret, it's the government's dirty secret. And they're asking, why can't we gather in our temples? They're open, they're wide, we can accommodate social distancing or whatever it is that the government wants. And listen to this binary's individual's response. This is what I wanted you to hear.
In the protocols as well.
No, I.
No, I. Did you notice the tone? No, I. Not, oh, well, it could be, or it should be, or it might be, but we're not too sure. It's, no, well. Let's do that again. You hear it right from the freaking get-go. Right?
Even not able to attend as a family the last prayers of the loved ones, which is very important for the Sikh culture. And they are asking for the increase the number of people to attend these funerals, especially the temple prayers, because the temples has a huge space. They can maintain the protocols as well.
I hear that, and I do feel that deeply for many families around the province. It is the most challenging time, and funerals are those times of both grief and celebration of lives that is very challenging for us to keep small and to postpone. And I know for many different faith communities.
Well, first of all, we're not talking about different faith communities. We're talking about the Sikh community, to which they are a huge voting bloc. They pay millions, billions of dollars in tax money. They are a major contributor to the economy of British Columbia, Canada, okay?
There are different important rituals that are...
This was specifically directed to the Sikh community, okay? Don't try and open it up to the Muslims, to the Catholics, to the Buddhists or whoever. Let's just address the Sikh temple and what they are asking for.
Are around death that need to be done. But I also know that there are ways that we can support people to do it safely through this most extraordinary of times, the global pandemic that we are all in.
No, it's you in it, in your own mind, with your paranoid freaking cohorts standing right beside you, running game like a player, worse than a pimp, for profit. Ching ching, cheap, easy to manufacture, cheap, on the cheap, analogs, right? And not tell the public what kind of chemicals are being used to wire them up.
And we have seen heroic examples of that from different faith communities.
Oh, now she's comparing them to different faith communities, as if the Punjabi community hasn't stepped up to the plate already. Okay? Like, how dare she compare the Punjabi community to any other faith community, as if the Punjabi community has fell short, when it's basically the Punjabi community that pays her paycheck.
Across this province, whether it's Sikh or Hindu or Muslim or Catholic or indigenous ceremony, we need to find ways to do ceremonies that are so important to us as a community safely for a little bit longer. We will be there again, and we will need to find ways to make up for the loss of those important ceremonies in our lives for the last year.
Oh boy, she was ready to start crying.
I think many of my friends in the South Asian community whether they're Sikh or Hindu or Muslim or other religions.
See, he's doing the same thing. We're not talking about other religions. We're not talking about Muslims. We're talking about Sikhs and them accessing their temples where they feed their people and anybody else in the neighborhood that wants to go for a meal. Okay? Right? You know? And anything else that they do in their temple. Right? And in this case, they want to mourn their family members. Right? And they're trying to, these two binary individuals are trying to blend it in all together and Maj posit as if it makes it okay. As if, like I said, the Punjabi community hasn't already stepped up to the plate, being that they pay these individuals paychecks with their hard work and their investments into this country. Okay? And I'm serious. If something happens to my landlords, Mr. and Mrs. Gill, and they die because of a fucking analog, I'm gonna go ballistic. Okay? I will make it a point to go out into the Punjabi community and stir up the fucking hornet's nest. Okay? Mark my words.
Christian or other religions have found this to be particularly...
Because you see, they're not going to be able to silence me on that one. Even if it's only 32 views on my channel. I'm going to be the one that's going to speak out against it. Right? Maybe nobody else is speaking out about it. Or if they are, maybe their channels or their video is being shadow banned too. Or maybe they're afraid to stand up and say something. Or maybe they think that their voice won't count. I don't know. I just know that if something happens to my landlords who are in their 70s, pushing 80-year-old, and are now being targeted in their private home and pressured to take something that is clearly experimental and being documented with data mining based on what the UK is doing, or maybe Israel, and they die, and I find out about it, which I will not stay silent on it. I will go door to door, reaching out to the Punjabi community for justice for my landlords, okay? And let this video be a living document to that commitment.
Difficult time, as all people have in BC, a very dear friend of...
Oh, well, you're not suffering any more than anybody else, so stick it in your ear and move along. Suck it up, buttercup.
Mine lost his father.
So, we're not talking about somebody else's father. We're talking about the Punjabis and how their whole lives and their traditions have been completely turned upside down for a political reason that's bankrupting a whole lot of them and driving them fucking crazy with these crazy masks that they're having to wear that's killing off their brain cells. Literally.
2 weeks ago and held a memorial with...
This guy always does this, oh, well, my father died, or my friend died, or so-and-so over there died, and because I went through it, therefore it makes it right for everybody else to go through the same garbage shit.
9 people in attendance, consistent with the rules, and spoke very movingly.
I followed the rules, so they can follow the rules, too.
Both about the power of that and the importance of that moment, but also the sense of loss at an event which undoubtedly hundreds of people would have otherwise attended, including myself. So people have been dealing with this throughout the pandemic, and we have to make a note of it. Not just those who passed away related to an infection of COVID-19, but everyone who's lost loved ones, who hasn't been able to fully grieve or fully...
Yeah, 1,700 and rising every day, more and more and more and more, with the fentanyl cull, another analog that's been covered up like a dirty secret as they continue to criminalize the weakest of the weak and the most vulnerable in society, who were basically targeted as 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old children.
Recognize that loss, and so that's something that all of us are going to have to think about doing at some point in the future when restrictions are reduced. Find ways to come together to recognize, to celebrate.
At some point in the future when restrictions are finally reduced. At some point in the future. Not being committed to anything. Not committing to anything. Not being specific to anything. Right?
lives of the people that we've loved who have passed away. So we appreciate that. But I would say this as well. There are 568 cases today.
Whoa! Jump! Go bury your head in the sand. And hopefully you won't catch the virus because you're breathing in sand particles.
Significant even.
Filling your lungs up with sand.
I believe the majority of those cases, overwhelming majority of those cases, at this time, it was different in January, but at this time, are in Metro Vancouver. Significant numbers of cases. About half of them, or a little more than half of them, in Fraser Health. He specifically said Fraser Health because he's targeting the Punjabi community. He's basically in a roundabout way blaming the Punjabis for spreading whatever it is that popped up in the last day with 525 cases. He's being specific, okay? I don't know how many Punjabis live up in the Metro Vancouver area. I just know that we've got over 350,000 of them and counting in the Fraser Valley where I live, okay? And he's targeting them. He's blaming them for the cases. So don't ask us to go into your temples if you're already spreading it when you're not in the temple. That's basically what he's saying. He's gaslighting people, okay? We have to continue to follow the measures and the guidance right now. And it's particularly important on gatherings. There are enormous numbers of important gatherings that people are not able to go ahead with right now, including sports. And now he's comparing it to other things. Sports, movies, right? You know, that kind of stuff, right? You know, but we're not talking about going to a sports tournament, although that's good for people. We're not talking about going to a movie theater, although some people really enjoy that. We're talking about spiritual coming to terms with death, having to let go, feeling guilty for not being there with your loved one, you know, being angry because you were denied access to your loved one, feeling completely helpless to the whole situation, but yet trying to do the right thing because you're blindly following your government, believing in what they're telling you to be true. And you have to remember, a lot of these people out here, many of them cannot speak English, okay? And they're old, right? Like, you know, when I had that little house, listen, I don't care how long this video is, like, this is so important, okay? Like, so important. And YouTube, seriously, you better leave these videos up because I've been actually I've been trying to be quite generic about what it is that I'm saying here outside of being point blank and very candid about it so that I'm not running people around in circles unlike these individuals, okay? And I don't care if anybody wants to call me a binary individual because that's fine because I don't plan on having any more kids, okay? So, what was I saying? Oh, yes. When I had that little house and Tawinder, okay, the owner of that little house, you know, he tore it down. He built another big house. Well, he has a dad, and he's Punjabi from old school, back in the day. And he got a long white beard. And he can't speak English, people. But he's one of the happiest fellas you could ever come across. Right? And, he could be my dad. I used to call him Dad. When I'd go to the little house and he was running around doing whatever he was doing, like when we were dismantling the house, I have videos of all that, right? And if I'm walking down the road with the kids and he's across the street out there doing something, he's all, hi, you know, you're happy, and oh, you know, right? I'm telling you, people, like, you know, he's going to do basically what he's told to do. Right? So I guess it really depends on what Tawinder's going to do. Because if Tawinder says, no, Dad, you're not getting it, because I've done the research, I can speak English, I know what's really going on, you're not getting it, Dad, then Tawinder will be safe. All right? And he can live for a long time yet. Because he's a pretty healthy old man, considering all things said. Like, that man is strong for his age, okay? I know. I was out there when they were busting up that house, and he was up in there in the wood pulling this and pulling and lifting and, you know, and hammering and, you know, he was doing all kinds of crazy shit out there. Okay? Now, if Tawinder turns around and he says,
well, Dad, the government says, blah, blah, blah. And, I'm going to take it for face value because all my other friends over there are going to do it, and there's a lot of peer pressure going on because the pastor said so, even though none of us can really talk among ourselves outside of our small circles and maybe what we might pick up on a radio, right? And again, we don't know how filtered or how censored their radio station is coming in on their own language. We don't know who's running that radio station and what the propaganda spin is being put out into the community. But the thing is, he's at great risk to injury people, harm and injury, and quite possibly death. To which the government will turn around and fudge the numbers, fudge the books, fudge the medical records, and they will blame it on the variant. Just as they're now blaming basically Fraser Health Authority area, Fraser Health Region, to which we're talking about Punjabis, and he knows there are over 350,000 Punjabis in my area alone. And I guess they're super spreaders without being in the temple because they have their multi-generational households. Grandpa, grandma, son, wife, children, and maybe a cousin in there or something, okay? Right? Because they have their monster homes. And that's all just par and parcel with wealth building and generational family support networking in terms of family, like Uncle John, families stick together, right? Their motto is families stick together. It works for them. Our motto was families stick together, but Uncle John was medically kidnapped while the rest of my family was being targeted, okay? So all I'm saying is this guy, he's trying to gaslight them, okay? Trying to say that if there's any kind of spreading going on out in my way, it has something to do with the Punjabis. And therefore, because of that, the Sikhs, right? I call them Punjabis because that's, right? And therefore, because of that, they're not going to allow them to congregate into their temples or to feed the people that they used to feed, who are probably now going hungry. Okay? Because I've been in those temples. I know what they do. And they feed people every day, to which a lot of people are not being fed now. So the government is not only bringing in brain damage, but they're also starting to probably make some people malnutritious. As they're gaslighting the community, saying, well, you ain't getting nothing because everybody else ain't getting nothing. And if you really want to take it there, you ain't getting nothing because the last time we checked, the highest numbers of infections comes basically from your community, right? In terms of Fraser Health Region, to which there are over 60% Punjabis. He not coming right out and targeting them, but he is targeting them, people. Are the Punjabis aware of that? Many of them can't speak English. Many of them have broken English. Right? And not every Punjabi is ethical. They have their sellouts and their problems within their own ethnic race, like every other ethnic race. Just because it was a Punjabi who harvested Shemai's eggs and God knows what else he took out, including her teeth, doesn't mean that every Punjabi in British Columbia, Canada, is corrupt. It just means that one Punjabi is in that corrupt criminal organization that is taking advantage of over 1,700 people dying en masse directly related to fentanyl, to which right now, every day, 4.5 people die every day because of fentanyl, on top of what we've got going on in secret in our hospitals and care homes where the Punjabis don't have a right to be with their own loved ones. So everything that I have been going through and I have been feeling is now being felt by over 350,000 Punjabis. Okay? Seriously. It took them a long time to catch up to my speed, but they're starting to fucking feel it now. Right? The difference between me and them is I got a good handle on the English language. And I have my thinking cap on, right? I've got 2 swords, people. I don't got just one. You've seen my swords, right? One for justice, and then I guess the other one for justice too, right? And, you know, justice is applicable right across the board, regardless of ethnic heritage, age, disabilities, right? Because, you know, we were just talking about Amari yesterday and his lot in life and what he's got to look forward to under this kind of dictatorship, right? And so, yeah, 350,000 Punjabis now just catching up to my speed to understand, fully understand what I and my kids went through and at what cost in terms of losing more family members to the same old okie dokie that's now being played out against 5.1 million people, where the prediction of 2.6 million within their lifetime are going to come down with cancer, as the government's going to say, oh, don't worry, let me help you, because we've got now mRNA technology to cure your cancer, but before we can cure your cancer, we're going to have to do some more research. So why don't you sign up and be a guinea pig to our immunization program? How many Punjabis can interpret that into the Punjabi language? If they're even willing to do that, people, I don't know. I just know that some of them, many of them, are falling through the cracks. And they're very, very, very vulnerable, like Tawinder's dad over there, unless Tawinder himself is on the ball. And I hope for God, you know, maybe I should go talk to Tawinder. Maybe I should. I should say, Tawinder, tell me what you think about what this government is doing. Just feel him out. See what he has to say, and then come back and tell you guys what he had to say. And if he said, oh, no, I'm gung-ho with the government, I'm going in 150%, I'll say, well, before you go do that, you might want to come listen to my videos. Or maybe you should do some more research on your own time with your friends who are smarter than me. Okay? Otherwise, the government's going to keep them on this path because you're going to hear it. This is why I'm doing this video. This is how I'm going to end this video. They're going to tell you, they're going to drag it out for another fucking year. They're sitting there saying, oh, no, we're working on it. We're making it so that you can be with your family. We're working on it. Yeah, it should be soon. Yeah. But you're going to hear it right from the horse's mouth here. That's not true. So hold on. Here, I have to put on glasses. I can't see.
Events, including religious ceremonies that are so important, such as weddings and funerals, not able to go ahead with in the same way that we would otherwise. Other events in communities, arts events, people often write.
We're not talking about arts events. Okay, we're talking about people mourning the death of a loved one that they couldn't say goodbye to, even in a hospital setting. And who will never be able to have access to independent autopsies, right?
Me about the movie industry.
How does going to a temple and mourning the loss of a loved one after you were slapped in the face and told that you couldn't see them while they were still alive and dying relate to, what did he say? My brain is like getting off the hook here, okay? What was it? Where are we? We're at 358. Let me just go back. Let's go to 338.
Enormous numbers of important gatherings that people are not able to go ahead with right now, including sporting events, including religious ceremonies that are so important, such as weddings and funerals, not able to go ahead with in the same way that we would otherwise. Other events in communities, arts events, people often write me about the movie industry or about movies, about cinema.
Yeah, they're saying, how is it that the movie industry can make You see, he caught himself here, okay? Because we've got a booming movie industry. I already told you, these guys are doing pre-recorded live streams and then re-streaming because they're just changing their clothes in between the fucking ghostwriting scripts that they pull out for each day that they read on, right? That's why there's like that predictive programming. Well, 79 people died in the last 5 days, even though the pre-recorded live stream was done 12 fucking days ago. So people are like noticing that the movie industry is out and about making mad money doing movies all over town, but yet nobody else can open up their own businesses and do this and do that. So he caught himself, and instead of saying the movie industry, he switched to the cinema. But what is the cinema? Like going to go watch a movie on the big screen, you pay, $10 and eat popcorn. What does that have to do with mourning somebody that died, that basically suffered for a whole year by themselves, sitting up in some care home, or ended up in the hospital and then were denied access to their family while they supposedly were hooked up to something, but nobody can know what it is, on a machine for 2 months until that person finally died, and then get a phone call and tell the family, come pick up the body. Come pick up the body. That's what they did with Shemaine. They were supposed to be doing a forensic autopsy. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the freaking coroner, and what does she say? The first thing that comes out of her bloody mouth: haven't you picked up the body yet? I'm like, pick up the body? Well, is the forensic autopsy done? Oh, no, we're not doing one. I said, excuse me? That was the understanding the day I walked out of that freaking... That's what I fought for the whole 9 days that she was on a machine for. Oh, well, I'll get back to you. They didn't do no forensic autopsy, people. All they did was test the blood. The cop came and told me, oh, they're going to test the blood that she initially came in with on their first fucking sample that they pulled out of her freaking arms. Okay? Before they embalmed her.
On being able to go to a movie and, of course, many events that bring people together in our own homes. But we have to stick together.
We have to stick together, but you can't come together in a wide open space, right, that's done great service for the community as a whole for years and 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 years, where the majority of people that go into that building pay good taxes to support this individual's paycheck, to only be told, oh, well, you can't have what you want, but we still expect you to stick together because everybody else is in the same boat as you. We're not playing no favoritisms here, although we will subliminally point the finger at you Punjabis, Sikhs, or whatever you want to call them, in the Fraser Valley area where I live, because there's so many of them. And if there's a reason why nobody can socialize, it's because of them, because they're the ones coming in with the fucking infections, apparently.
To stop the spread right now.
To stop the spread.
We simply have to do it. And that means that these sacrifices, which have been enormous, and which all of us, every single one of us, have felt personally in the last year, because I doubt there's a person in BC who hasn't lost someone close to them in some way.
Does that make it right? No, it doesn't, people. It's just another slap in the face of millions.
In the past year, hasn't known someone, a family member or a friend or others that you're connected with, or a workmate or whoever, who've not been lost in the past year.
Well, yeah, because the fentanyl is off the roof and getting higher and higher, faster and faster, as all the ambulance workers are burning out and shutting down the ambulance vehicles. So that whoever's dying just dies faster.
So we know that...
Well, maybe not die faster, but make sure they die. Like Shemaine. It was made sure that she'd die. And she did.
This has been a loss that's been felt.
When you lace somebody's cigarettes without them knowing with fentanyl, it's just a matter of time before they die. And that's what happened to Shemaine. Shemaine could have died upstairs that night. If I wouldn't have sent, I'm telling you people, if I would not have sent her downstairs at 1:30 in the morning because I wanted to go to sleep, I didn't realize, nobody realized what was going on. I could have came out in the morning and found her dead on my own couch with Amari on the floor. Or I could have had her go into the bedroom and she could have slept on the bed with Amari, and I would have slept on the couch, and Andre could have slept on the floor. I would have gotten up in the morning, went into the bedroom, and because she had a smoke maybe before she went to sleep, she could have died in her own fucking bed with Amari laying beside her. That's how insidious lacing people's cigarettes with fentanyl is. And the government knows it, and they don't do jack shit about it except cover it up, because the bottom dollar line is it's the dead bodies that stimulate the economy. Not looking after old people and making sure that they can go to the toilet and they're comfortable and they're happy before they die. That is not the priority, okay? The priority is to try and cut off the welfare line by any means necessary, regardless if it's the homeless people on the cheap with a $320 welfare check because they're homeless, or if it's a pension plan coming in at $3,500 to $4,000 a month because they were a government worker like Uncle John who actually earned their pension.
By everyone. We have to ask people in every community, especially.
We're not asking, and look what he's doing. Look what he's doing. Look at him. Right? What, is he getting cocky? Like, I haven't been talking about this too much. Don't think I forgot about it, okay? Because I haven't.
And people of faith and people such as you mentioned, the Sikh faith, are one of those groups. We have to be with one another right now in solidarity. Remain apart as much as possible right now and consistent with the...
He's begging, he's groveling. But you know what? As soon as he doesn't get his own way, he will turn around as fast and put you in your place simply because I guess it was the Punjabis who put him into power. Being that they're, like, in control of a large part of the voting bloc.
Rules and the guidance of public health.
But even if the BC Liberal government was to come in, it wouldn't be any different. If anything, it would be more draconian with the BC Liberal government, right? Because, you know, that's the way it is out here, right? And people are already suffering less, or I mean, they're already suffering too much. So I guess the voters, if it wasn't rigged, took the lesser of the two evils, right? In terms of a political party representing the province, okay?
Important right now as we start to vaccinate people. 5% at this time, 1 in 20 of those eligible to be vaccinated, and making progress every day as we do this to stop the spread and make sure that we save.
As they continue to give people misinformation and lead them down the garden path in the wrong direction. Because it's cheap to manufacture mRNA analogs that can be tweaked at any moment as new variants come in, and yada 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 yada.
Lives and save suffering, save people from suffering across BC.
Prabjot, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. The latest poll suggests 60% Canadians suffering the mental health issue due to COVID. Or some experts suggest we might see the mental health tsunami after this pandemic. So is there any take on that?
Yeah, and that is something that we've been watching very carefully as well. And we know from...
watching and laughing.
From literature on other crises.
Laughing, okay? Laughing. Been through it already. Right? They torture you and they laugh at you at the same time. Go onto my website, okay, and read what my girls wrote when they took Andre away, and those girls of mine that did absolutely nothing wrong and were always there for Andre and Sierra and whatever after Andre was born, and then all of a sudden their worlds were turned upside down because of some overzealot fucking social worker that just got out of freaking college who wanted to prop up the ministry budget by apprehending her first child, Okay? Read how they treated my girls, okay? And how they were laughing at my girls. Literally laughing at my girls as they were basically psychologically torturing them by the bullshit that they put my girls through in order to see Andre. And then eventually just cut off the visits and then tried to blame the girls when in fact that had nothing to do with the girls. It had everything to do with them. Like, this is some sick shit that we're dealing with here, okay?
That a lot of it depends on the support that we get as a community. Resilience is really a community effect, more so even than an individual effect. Our ability to have our...
They're destroying the Punjabi community. They're bringing in mental illness that, in some cases, many cases, those people will never recover. Okay?
Individual resilience is also dependent on our community. So that is a really important thing to remember that we know from previous crises. We also know that there is a sense of anxiety that comes with the uncertainty that we're living through, and that all of us are feeling it to some degree or the other. Some people are...
The only uncertainty, people, that I'm feeling is I'm waiting to be murdered. Okay, I'm waiting to have attempted murder placed upon my life as they will try to corner me to take their analog, and they will use whatever method they can to intimidate me to do it. And if I still don't do it, I mean, if I'm alive, you will hear what will happen. If I end up homeless, you will see me out in the streets with my camera trying to find a way to upload videos onto YouTube. If I just disappear and don't make no more videos, we know why, people. We know why. That is my only fear. Outside of fearing for my grandkids and what their future is going to be like, to which I don't think they're not going to have a future. Okay? You can't have a future under these kind of conditions, right? When you're just a sitting duck to the predator class.
Float above it, if you will, but many of us are feeling it intensely, and I'm particularly concerned about young people, and young people in their teenage and early 20s,
because their brains are still developing, people, and they're under mass cortisol, okay? Cortisol, I'm pretty sure it's called cortisol. Cortisone? No, cortisone is different. Cortisol. That's when the brain is traumatized and it goes into a heightened state and it produces chemicals that is called cortisol that actually alters the brain. And if it's under that state for a long period of time, like what happened to my family with the wrongful and illegal apprehension of Andre and the illegal eviction of Sierra, and then her turning into a junkie within 11 days after being disconnected from methadone, blah, 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 blah. All that did was create a high state of cortisol in everybody's brain, and they kept it there 15 months until we finally got him back. And then just as our brains had a chance to calm down and maybe get to a more normal state so that perhaps it could repair itself, that's when they went for the jugular and medically kidnapped Uncle John, based on the fact that they thought that they could steal, one, his inheritance that he received from Joan that they never told him about for 14 months. Plus, they thought they were going to get a double bonus because they had just assumed that Uncle John had a superannuation life insurance policy like every other public union sector worker has. But you see, Uncle John, he wanted to show them what true love was really about, and he wanted to ensure that nothing bad would happen to him and nothing bad would happen to us. He just didn't know that they would be brazen enough to do what they did, right? And they did it. And he suffered. And he had an early death. But at the end of the day, if they got any money, to which when this lawsuit goes to the government, they need to investigate and make sure that that family, that extended family to whom Uncle John had no real relationship with for a long time, outside of maybe a phone call here, visit his mom once a year or twice a year across the ferry, right? Never talked to his sisters, never really talked to Debbie. After Joan died, he talked a couple times. But outside of that, his family was here in Vancouver in this house, people. Okay? But if for some reason, with their internal third-party backroom deals, they reinstated Uncle John's superannuation life insurance policy, and they paid out those people whatever it was that they thought that they could commit fraud with, then the government needs to do something about that. I wouldn't be surprised, because the reason I say that is because I got left with all the bills, remember? And they've had the audacity to phone up freaking Royal and say that Uncle John was a retard in the year 2000 and he didn't know what he was doing when he put his name down on the credit card with me, with the Royal Bank, to where he wasn't responsible because he was a retard and, he had brain damage, he had issues, so he didn't know what he was agreeing to when he put his John Henry down for that credit card, just so that they wouldn't be held responsible for it. And it was only $3,000. Guess what? It's almost done. I'm almost done now. After all this time, I think I got something like $500 left on a $3,000 bill. Okay? So I paid it off, right? Because that's what Uncle John liked about me. I was responsible. But the thing is, if they did that with a bank, what's to say they're not going to phone up the provincial government, being that they're in bed, right, with the provincial government? They're all fucking government workers roaming the hall, doing what they want, right? Right? Who's to say they're not cutting backroom deals, right? Reinstating Uncle John's superannuation life insurance policy that he canceled when he was 65, let it run out, just not pay into it, so that by the time he was 76, there was nothing, because it stopped at age 65. How do we know they didn't get that reinstated? Through their backroom deals and bribes. Just so they could make more fucking money off of the taxpayers. Okay? And because of what they did with the Royal Bank and how they did it, I wouldn't put it past them, people. And that's why I say it.
Because they have had the least ability to affect things, and their lives have been the most changed, and they feed, or they have the anxieties that all of us as adults are feeling and projecting into the world as well. So, we need to pay attention to young people. We need to support them. We need to look to providing additional supports for the future for young people. Because if you're one of the young people in my life who graduated from university or from high school last year and didn't have a celebration, who had very limited job prospects because of what we were going through. University is
but that doesn't matter because Mommy's rich.
During a period of time,
she makes something like $360,000 a year. She makes more money than the fucking premier. So what does it matter if her child, her teenager that can't go get a job? Do you think that teenager's actually going to suffer? No. Don't compare yourself and what your so-called teenager is up against when you're an anomaly, okay? There's not too many people in British Columbia, Canada, that can suck on the taxpayer's tit at $360,000 every year, not to mention your fucking perks and benefits, okay?
Connection is so much a necessity in one's life. It's how you find your way in the world. So this is something that
I guess she had to put that out there to prove to people that she's not a binary individual, that she actually popped out something from between her legs, right?
That, as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about. We need...
I'm sorry, people. I have a potty mouth. That's another thing Uncle John liked about me. Boy, oh boy, he'd get me going. Oh, yeah. He liked to get me going. Oh, yeah. Right? My other landlord, Wally, he liked to get me going, too, in terms of yappity yap, 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 yap.
To support mental health for all of us right now.
Why? Why did they like to get me going? Because it stimulated their brains and it made them think. Right? I was a trigger for them to think. And they liked thinking. thinking. It kept Uncle John alert because we'd get into fucking debates over the shit. And then we would come together as reasonable and responsible adults to a conclusion.
But we need to look to the future for how do we build those things in place that allow, particularly our young people,
I think
to
I missed what I'm
recover
looking for.
This most
I don't
traumatic
remember
year
listening
in
to
that
this.
way. And
This is
we
not
have
what I
been doing
wanted
quite
to.
a lot of work on the
I think I
societal
missed it,
impacts
people.
of this pandemic and the societal consequences, not just of the virus, but of the measures we've put in place to deal with the virus. And we've been monitoring mental health issues
We've
as
been
well.
monitoring.
So we know that early on there was a lot of concern about mental health. We've had increased people phoning helplines, especially young people.
Wow.
We know that there's increased interpartner violence and violence against women that have been triggered through this process as well. But we also know that there are things that we can do that help diminish that, and that most people will recover in time if we have the right things in place.
Most people will recover in time. So in other words, she is admitting that whatever mental fucking handicaps people are developing over this bullshit is permanent. Okay? Is permanent, people. So what is the definition of most? 51% out of 100? I mean, you could consider that to be most. It's only 1% over that 50% mark in order for it to qualify as most. So what? You're going to sacrifice 49% of the fucking population with permanent brain damage, not to mention what's happening with the lack of oxygen? Okay, we're not talking about just cortisol inflammation here, right? That literally has been documented, people, to alter the brain. This is why I went livid when they took Andre. Okay, this is why I went livid when they medically kidnapped Uncle John, because the cortisol in my kids' brains went off the freaking roof. And when that happens, they become vulnerable to outside influences that don't necessarily have their best interests at heart. Whether it's coming in from a school system or whether it's coming in from a controlling boyfriend who ultimately snuffed her out. In terms of Shemaine. Not to mention what happened to Sierra. Okay? And don't think that the rest of us in this household are all doing honky-dory, because we're not. We're all still suffering after all this time. And now we're bracing ourselves for even a worse time because of what governments are now doing. Okay?
So this mental anxiety, depression, concern that we're going through now.
That we're going through? No, lady. You're making over $360,000 a year. Okay? You're not going through shit. Because after you've done robbing the piggy bank, you're probably going to get on a fucking airplane and you're going to get the hell out of BC. Okay? Seriously, that's probably what's you're just gonna fall off the fucking grid and go into some Bahamas and go sip little martinis or something on a beach. Right? You think, what? She's gonna be like a Gordon Campbell, go to fucking England and work for the Queen?
We can recover from that, and most...
Drop the word we. You don't speak for us. You speak for yourself. And you don't even speak for yourself. You speak from a ghostwriter's point of opinion when it comes to spin doctoring.
People will, if we're able to continue our sense of community and find those right supports for people.
If we continue to have our sense of
very
community,
concerned.
but just don't feed the hungry, don't mourn the dead, don't feel sorry for yourselves, right? Just keep away from each other because you're all infected with fucking sewage, and God forbid if it became one big fucking cesspool.
And we are looking at the impacts and what are the specific...
No, I know. She didn't say that. Those were my words. But you see, that's what I said. Uncle John liked me, to get him to think about the other side of the coin, right? Institutional racism. This is what you're looking at. Institutional racism. all right, which is not necessarily directed at any particular race in particular, although it does stem into racial targeting. Natives, blacks, poor white trash, right? You know, depending on how rich the minority group is, if they're Chinese or, you know, Sikh or Punjabi or something, or a Muslim, you know, it's a lot of classism. But at the end of the day, they've already played the race card when they brought in Fraser Health with the high number of so-called infections, right, that nobody's sick with. They're just coming in testing as they're sick through that PCR test that's been over magnified, which from my understanding should never be used for what it's being used for currently, okay? Which in that case would fall under institutional racism in terms of a government targeting a particular race, and in this case it would be Sikhs or Punjabis, right? Because they're basically saying, no, you can't congregate in your temples because in your area of town where there's like 350,000 of you, you're spreading it among yourselves when you're not supposed to be socializing to begin with. So why would we allow you to socialize now if you're the problem? That's what institutional racism is, okay? I'm right. I've been hearing it off and on for a while. I just haven't made any comment on it, right? But I am now.
Measures that we need to have to support every one of us in the next month to a year, because it's going to be a long time for this to play out as well.
There you go. That's what I wanted you to hear. In the next month up to a year. Okay? We're in March. She's adding on another year. There. Now I can end this video, but I'm going to take it back. We're at 109.10. Okay? And we're going to go to 8:56. We're going to go to 8:56. I'm not going to carry on with the rest of this. I don't know what it is. I'm tired. Right? I'm flabbergasted. I'm depressed. I'm having panic attacks. I'm scared. I'm terrorized. I feel terrorized. Right? I'm preparing to die. Everything that a person, well, an individual that likes to harvest louche negative energy gets off on. Okay? That's exactly what I'm feeling here. But the whole point of this video is this last little bit in terms of we're coming out into the light. Just as we're coming into the light, you've heard her say it off and on throughout, it's going to get better. Yeah. But she made sure to point out that we've got another year based on everything that I've said in the last two videos. So basically the Punjabis might as well accept the fact that their temples are just going to start molding from the inside out as they sit empty. For all their investment, it meant nothing. Kind of like the nonprofit. For all the investment, the 20 years of investment into the nonprofit that Uncle John and my kids and the few other people around us who sacrificed to get even to this point has gone off to the wayside for nothing. Well, like I said, the Punjabis are catching up to my speed because now their temples can sit empty and know what it fucking feels like, because that's basically what my family and what I represent in terms of standing up for my community has been about. For nothing. Because of binary individuals such as this.
Looking at the impacts and what are the specific measures that we need to have to support every one of us in the next month to a year, because it's going to be a long time for this to play out as well.
Okay. I'm going to end it now. I don't know how long this is. Another hour-long video. But it's important. It's important that I do this, people. As a legacy. Okay? For one, my foundation. 2, for my family. 3, for my community. 4, for my country. 5, for humanity. Okay? I may have bad eyes. I may have off the roof ringing in my ears. I may have a whole lot of fucking pressure going on in my head. But if you notice, I'm a pretty fast thinker, okay? And I can pick up on things, right? Because I like my brain. You understand what I'm saying? Right? Just like I don't drink that beer that's in that bedroom because I like my brain. That's not to say I won't ever have a beer, because I will. I just don't drink it very often for a reason, because I like my brain. Well, it's the same thing for their analog, although I'm never going to take their analog. I'm not. Not after what they did to my daughter and to the rest of my family because of their drugs, basically, okay? And their shenanigans. And I'm glad that the Punjabis are now starting to feel exactly what I've been feeling for years. For years and years and years. Because through their pain will come strength. Okay? Serious. You watch and see. Don't be surprised if I don't come around one day with some good news. Okay? It's like a volcano. It's just bubbling. Right? The main guru that might be leading them off to the side, down the wrong path, he's only going to be able to hold the whole flock for so long. Sooner or later, something's going to break. Okay? And if they're saying it's going to be another year of this targeting of the Punjabi community anytime anything ever goes wrong in the Fraser Health Authority area, well, it's your guys' fault that we got an infestation of the variant, right, that's spreading around because of your multicultural, multifamily homes, right? Or maybe you snuck in a banquet with a wedding in some basement, like a backyard chicken operation that nobody should know about, right? Because that's basically what they're doing. They've been doing it, people. I just haven't been pointing it out until today. And I hope the fucking Punjabis pick up on it, because that is institutional racism, right? You could be white, you could be native, you could be black, you could be Punjabi, you could be a Muslim, you could be whatever. Institutional racism is institutional racism. And this, what they're doing, is institutional racism. Okay. You heard it. They're going to drag it out for another year, people. Even though throughout the whole process, they were saying, oh no, don't worry, it's going to get better. We're working on trying to find a way that you can go see your loved ones in the hospital. Sure. At the end of the fucking video, they're saying it's going to take a year. Okay. We'll see which one comes first.